Yeah.
Three.
Yeah, three. Good. Sollen wir das abdecken? Ja. Okay, so every country has a different You don't know only what you do. Yes. Oh. Okay. Okay. No,
Pretty, are we, there's still when someone says another. Yeah. I'm good. You almost tired. My class at 4:50. Okay. All right. See you.
I'll be in tomorrow. Have a good class. Yeah.
Yeah, have a good night.
I'll try to be back later.
Yeah. Started making our playlist. Not everyone. Oh, yeah, you forgot to. Snaps. Everyone's long weekend. Yeah, long weekend. We'll say. Actually, our piece of us. Came home on Friday. Um. Yeah, my birthday. Number 30. I have this tradition where I always take my birthday. I've done it. Got how hard moms work that day. Oh. So a recurring, event in my career. Always the day off. There are lots. That's why. You haven't sent me your songs. Send me your songs again. I know we talked about them, then I forgot my notes today. But I started reading stuff. Could send them in that form that I posted. Yeah, class playlist. I think I posted it in the announcement from week 2. So we will go ahead and get started. How's everyone doing? Good. Week 3 for classes. So far, so good. Okay. Stressed out already? It's only week 3. We cannot be stressed out yet. You have a good system in place for how you are managing all of those things, those tasks. So that's a good goal. Keep your weekends free. Yeah. Good. What else is going on? Did anyone do anything fun over the weekend? Or last weekend for the holiday? Oh, the Bears won. That's good. You're good. That. What else? You want to watch anything good? Or read anything good? Something. You were watching soccer. That. Okay. And did Ecuador win? What else? Having fun stories. Boring life. Sometimes a boring life is just okay. And relax. Like you'll say you have like something in your face. It's like something fun.
Not so. Just a lot of parties.
See, parties are fun.
Yeah.
What kind of parties? Like birthday parties or
Yes, like my brother and someone. That's fun party.
yeah. Where do the 21-year-olds go these days?
Well, you know, I like to go to where my family's like don't use that party. Like it's
So like rent a spot and throw it in a party. Going to a club.
Yeah.
Oh, so they're like bar from all the down bar. I bet. Yeah. I need a seat. And they don't want to wait. Yeah. It's an experience. You guys still go out again.
Only ever have to go to those games, like I didn't have to go to them. This is when I'm my student, so. After it's game is the.
Right, right. Yeah. We're just talking about weekends. What's going on? Turning 21 parties, all that fun. fun young people stuff. Yeah. I celebrated my 11-year wedding anniversary. That's big, so that's nice. Favorite bar in our neighborhood. You live in Portage Park and you're 21 and enjoy a cocktail, or they have non-alcoholic options. It's super fun. Yeah. Then I went to Chuck E. Cheese for a birthday party the next day. That's my life. Sometimes you get to go out and have fun, and then you get to go to birthday parties at Chuck E. Cheese. All right, well, we will get started. Here's our game plan. There's snacks too, if you need a snack from me. So today we're going to start talking about kind of laying the foundation for planning and what that means when we're thinking about curriculum and classrooms. We're going to talk about the role of technology, and you all will share out your tech apps and tools. And then we'll do a little bit of kind of practice planning using the DCOE long lesson plan, which is everyone's favorite. We're gonna work. And then we're gonna review the curriculum model, comparative paper or presentation, assignment, and we're gonna do groups. You can, your partner and divvy up the marks. Okay, cool. Any questions? Here's the learning objectives. Okay, so use that QR code and that's basically developmentally appropriate practice and what that means in the classroom space. There's just like a little more helpful of what's your all here. Yes, right. What are some things that we're seeing up here? What are the themes that play? Yeah, you'll see. Not different, not- Highlight that a lot, and then we just like to see our children. That you have to talk about. Environment. Middle. Okay, yeah. You want to tell us a little bit more? Okay, thanks. Yeah, great. So the activities and your planning and what you'll do in your classroom will be kind of focused and centered on children's interests and what they like to do. Yeah, great. Yeah, so I think teacher-directed and child-centered often seem like opposite ends of a spectrum sometimes, but clearly like they have to be working hand in hand. We talked a little bit about this first week, right? There's kind of elements of all these kind of instructional approaches and strategies that we'll use that seem kind of counter to each other, but are obviously an important. They're all important elements to how we engage children in our classroom. There's some teacher-directed and teacher-initiated, teacher planned things, right? Along with pulling ideas from the students. So, yeah, I think these are all so look right on target for what you about all this. Okay, so when we're thinking about developmentally appropriate practice in classrooms, we're thinking about both those kind of curriculum-based elements, or maybe it's like a project approach, we're pulling ideas from the child, and instructional strategies that might also include more teacher-directed time, right? When introducing lessons. But regardless of those things, right, you're always going to be thinking about like each individual child in your class and what they need. You're thinking about developmental level. You're going to think about social and cultural, right? So all of these things are going to be important to consider when you think about your curricular activities, because you'll have a curriculum that you'll follow. And so when you think about those activities that you do, and you'll have a chance to think about some activities today. Right, you have to think about all of it. All right, so how do I how comfortable do you all feel with planning lessons and activities and thinking about building the appropriate practice, like in practice? creating the learning, the strategies to use. Like on a scale of 1 to 5, just like throw your hand up. Like 5 is like, you got this. 1 is like, no idea. And someone- All right, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. Okay, great. Well, I suppose you're in the right place. I hope so. No, it's good, right? I mean, you have to start somewhere, right? And I think, how do we start? We have to be thinking about a few things before we can start doing kind of all the fun stuff, right? Which is the fun part of being a teacher, is kind of like planning the learning, right? And thinking about how we're supporting children. But we have to do some other things first, right? So understanding development, right? So what is important about development? Like why? Why do we care to understand child development? Like you think they study child development? Okay, so we can understand kind of what the levels at which children are at developmentally.
Because every child has a stage, to know like how we can support that child or
Yeah.
whatever stage.
Right. So all of our students are gonna come to us with varying levels of ability. They're gonna be developmentally at different levels, social, emotional, right? All of the domains of learning, of development, right? They're gonna all be on a varied spectrum. Different languages. What else? Other thoughts?
We have kids that are nonverbal, so
Nonverbal, right? So there's a lot of things to consider about children's development, right? And so this is actually just like in your textbook, and I thought it was kind of a nice table that thinks about principles of development and learning and aligning with kind of EAPs, right? And thinking about what that's like. So I won't read through this. I just wanted to call it out. Like it's that application of these ideas, right? Like what does child development look like in practice? How do we go from theories about, say, Vygotsky, right, to understanding things like scaffolding in a classroom, right? And that is a direct kind of correlation to that theoretical idea. So another thing that we probably won't talk a lot about in this class, but when you take my 355 class, we will talk a lot about this. So we also apply these ideas of development to how we think about how children learn particular content in like math or science, or obviously reading. So there's like these developmental progressions or these learning trajectories is what they're called. And so this is one for math. So I obviously for math and science, social studies class as well. And so this will be lucky enough to also learn in parallel with this class, and she'll continue saying we're going to do that class now. And so you'll learn more about that, and you all learn about them this semester. But these are great, right? Because they use developmental knowledge to think about how children learn. So here, for example, this idea like counting, right? So counting is a mathematical concept. So how do we help children from very young ages? So here, this, these are all kind of ranges. Every child's going to be different, but this idea that an infant, right, is still engaged in learning math and mathematical ideas. And these are kind of the ways in which those skills and abilities and lots of learning all build on each other. So you can see that here. And again, we'll talk more about that. Here's another one kind of for reading, right? So thinking about the ways in which our brain is developing and how children learn to read, right? So there are these trajectories and progressions at which children are developing, and we use those to think about content learning and how to teach certain content. So you can, and there's all these all the resources there. All right, so let's take a second, just turn to your neighbor, and think about how do these ideas, not just these ideas, but just like learning theories that you apply to the classroom. Just a quick little brainstorm. Right there.
Okay, so how did you ideas right for class? What do you think about behavior?
Most of the time, like the teacher and the will be kind of like not really complaining about the kids' behavior, but it will be kind of mentioned even during the parent conference with the kids and the parent. That will be kind of mentioned if the kid is. Yeah, that's a main idea.
So behaviorism. Um, um, I feel like when it comes to behavior, we have to acknowledge the background of the child too, and we have to kind of see where it is that that behavior is coming from too as well. But yeah, you're
And
right.
like
We
with the
should
family members, right? If there's like siblings and stuff, it
not
will
just
affect.
siblings, but think about also the parents, right? Or the parents in their lives, like how much of that time are they dedicating to them? You know what I mean? Because it's like that's how you also get like a very good relationship with parents as well. So, and then cognitism. Well, that would be like as a teacher, you kind of have to see how they are retaining, whichever subject.
And would that be with the tests they're taking or like with their homework?
I think
Like,
it kind of goes with like
everything in the class.
because then you think about it and when you test, what do you need? You need a good rest. You need good, but are they getting there? You know what I mean? And constructivism.
What would that be?
The knowledge is constructed by having experience. So basically, that's kind of like we have experiences, right? And so now we have to, as like future teachers, we have to acknowledge the students, like what kind of experience have they gone to?
Background.
Yeah, because we have students that are coming from
Oh yeah, like the
different countries, so it's either language or education. Well,
yeah.
yeah, so I think it's just more of like a focusing on every child and trying to see like how you can better support that
And
child.
understand them as kind of like individuals and as a class,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Because it could also be like, let's say, like the teacher makes a lesson plan, and
So what are some thoughts that you all have talked about or sorry to interrupt, continuing to talk about?
I'm trying to remember if it was theories from the one nothing that people don't do experience, but I feel oh, I know exactly. I know what you're talking about.
They're like 7.
It's like it's in your class. I think.
Yeah, so constructivism is kind of like a mix of theories, really. I mean, it's like it is kind of a Piagetian idea too, but it's also can be sometimes seen as a Vygotskian idea.
Yeah, Jen was thinking was it makes you basically pay. So
Yeah.
The part she was mentioned like that's which is the one
The social.
yeah.
Oh, so like Eric Erikson, he's like Erikson was a social emotional like stage theorist. But sociocultural is Vygotsky. So that's thinking about like the social context, like the social and cultural context. So things like language are really important in that theory. So why do we care to know about theory when it comes to classroom learning or classrooms? Why would it be helpful to know these things?
Well, to apply and kind of see the level, so then you know which
Sure. So you ground your work in theoretical ideas, right? And so how might some of these theories, so what would a behaviorist theory look like in a classroom? How might you use it? What do you think? So
So when I think about like the words brain and
yes, right? Because theories are what kind of theories? What do we remember? Come on, my 303. Don't let me down. Don't let me down.
I feel like we know, but it's just not
Dictate.
coming
I know.
to us.
We're gonna know now. You're gonna know today. We're gonna remember. So behaviorist theories are theories like all these like conditioning theories, right? Or social learning theory is kind of like a behaviorist, right? It's like based on rewards and based on stimuli and being responsive to those things. So things like creating routines, right?
Creating
Like,
rules.
creating rules, right? These are all behaviorist ideas applied in our classroom, right? We're setting routines, we're getting students kind of set up for success, and they're following along. They know, right? When I do, when the teacher puts the something on the board, right? It's time to do XYZ, right? So you have conditioned your students essentially, right? To kind of know what's going on because we're creating these routines. And so these are all behaviorist ideas, right?
So
and
does
how
that, does that include the transitioning?
Yes.
Or
So
the way
yeah.
of-
So transitioning, right? You're going to use rewards, right? And so, so these are, so these are all behaviorist ideas. When you create like reward charts in your classrooms, right? These are ideas that are coming from behavior. And then children are obviously using other kinds of theories, right? Like social learning theory. They're all modeling behavior for each other, right? So they're observing other students. So theories are like, you learn them for a reason, right? Because they do apply, right? And they're important. They provide you an important foundation and context for how to think about children's learning and what will be helpful. How about these other ones? How about, let's think about like,
Question, one friend, she has her two kids right now, particularly the one in downtown.
okay.
So she thinking that like they don't have time out, they don't have like
Yeah.
restaurant.
Yeah.
Then like the ones in the city, one of my friends, she said like, oh, they're still working on that. Like and I heard they were gonna try to get rid of the time out, but I mean, we're gonna like need to block line instead of like that. Like I think I didn't pick up the kid my son at school on Friday. I learned the other one. And it looks like my 3-year-old was painting the walls. And when I went to drop him off today, she's like, oh, I couldn't talk to you because you didn't come on Friday. And she's like, your son was inside now. And I was like, okay, like, I didn't say anything because like I know, I mean, it's just like his first month in school.
Yeah. I think so. I'm interested to hear other people's perspectives, but I think, so for me, timeout is problematic when there's no discussion of behavior. Children are not going to learn if they don't know why they're over there, right? They're just sitting in a timeout. What is this teaching them? Like, I don't know. They don't know that their behavior was wrong, probably. That's why they did it, right? Or maybe they did it and they just need someone to help them talk about it and find a new strategy for what to do the next time, Johnny steals my toy and then right? So, yeah, I mean, timeouts are just very, right? I mean, it's like old school, like, it's just like an old school technique. And
so like,
yeah, I mean, I think you can call it something else. You can take a you're going to take a break. I'm going to come with you and we're going to talk about what happened.
and especially extreme.
Right. Or very young kids too, right? What is helpful for them when you're thinking about this kind of social emotional, like regulation of like emotion behavior piece is using like puppet, right? So because sometimes they don't really they're more playful, right? They're thinking in a more magical way. And so this is where development comes in, right? To think about the developmentally appropriate ways to engage them in these conversations. So if you use two puppets, it takes them out of that situation. One, because then they're like, I didn't do anything wrong, right? And I'm very egocentric and blah, 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 right? So when you think about like having two puppets together, right? And one puppet maybe steals a toy from another puppet, and then you say like, oh, like what's happening here, right? And then they're explaining what's happening, and well, how do you think this puppet, how do you think this guy feels if she takes this toy from him, right? And then they can talk it out in a way that's like taking them out of that situation, which is much more helpful because then you then bring it back, right, to that idea that, oh, well, like, what did you just do? With, right. Oh, yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Why? They
Yes,
think,
timeout is like a not development. Don't be throwing kids in the corner.
I used to have,
That's not what we do.
no, but imagine you walk in and your kid's in the corner. Like what?
I know it, and when she told me that, it was gonna be in the morning, I didn't have like upset that, okay.
Yeah.
So like, it's kind of hard to process at the beginning, but then I was like coming back.
Right.
It's like, not when you're understanding what things, it's like, okay. Like,
Oh, you're all ruined now forever. Because you know so much. You'll have so much information that's like, with your own children, it becomes a really hard to be like, "Ugh." Yeah. Yes, but yeah, so that, right, so that, right, that is not developmentally appropriate. There are developmentally appropriate ways to engage in those things. We will talk about those kinds of things too, right? Like thinking about transitions and like what you do when your kids are going wild, right? And like, how do you bring them back to, back on track? Like, what are the kinds of things that you can put in place? And these are all likely going to be like these behaviorist ideas or modeling good behavior, social learning theory. So obviously like Piaget, right? A lot of things we take from Piaget's ideas of like assimilation and accommodation, right? And being able to pull from information that children already know and using that to engage them in new knowledge. So these are all, Vygotsky, and I another slide because I'm probably just getting that on myself. Right, so here, just like, right, so we talk about these like incentive jars. So this is like a class incentive jar. You would have this on your whiteboard in your classroom, right? And their goal, they have some tasks that they probably all have to do every day, right? And they have to listen and they have to be quiet, to be active, whatever the rules are that you set in your classroom, right? And then every day, they get a smiley face that they're working towards something. So this is clearly a behaviorist tool, right? That we are trying to elicit a particular behavior by providing an incentive. And so this is, right, that's taken from those ideas. So this idea here, right, like thinking about, this is a Piagetian idea, this other picture, right? So thinking about concrete, pictorial, symbolic, right? When we teach young children all kinds of things, right? But so I particularly use this when I teach math, right? In thinking about, we always use manipulatives when we're teaching young children mathematical ideas to count, right? Or they're using their fingers, right? They're using some concrete something that they can touch or hold, feel, or see, right? And then you're moving to these other more kind of sophisticated ways of thinking about numbers and counting. You're never going to be like, kids know what the numbers is, right? Generally, we teach them those things. But it's not really the most developmentally appropriate way to teach them those things, right? They just see that as a number 6. Can they go back and like represent it in 6, right? So it's better to start them off by saying, we're going to count to 6 and we're going to see what 6 bears look like, or 6 chips look like, or six pencils look like, whatever it is, right? You can use anything in your classroom. And then maybe they want to draw it themselves. So this like pictorial representation. So they're representing it in a different way. And then you're introducing numerals and what that means, because then they understand that numerals mean quantity. There are 6 things, right? When you teach them 6 in the symbolic form when they're too little, it's just like a random number. They don't actually know necessarily what it means, right? So it's better to teach them in this way. And this is a very Piagetian idea, right? Going from concrete to symbolic thinking. These are his statements, essentially, right? So your book actually talks about this idea, the cycle of learning, which honestly I've never heard that. What's there? Seems like a good idea. And it seems right. But obviously this is a Vygotskian idea, right? ECED and scaffolding. So, Vygotsky talked about the zone of proximal development. This was a part of his theory. Scaffolding was actually not a part of his theory. It's a strategy that's taken from his theory. So we use scaffolding all the time when we ask questions to each other, to our students, to our kids, to other people, right? Language is a big part of Vygotsky's theory. So using language in these really productive ways, like asking open-ended questions, right? Understanding process. These are all a part of Vygotskian's ideas and the zone of proximal development. So thinking about what can this child do if they get help,
And the help doesn't necessarily need to be you. It could be another student, right? So these are ways when you think about how you set up your small group activities, right? You might be thinking that you want to do a mixed level grouping. So then you have some students who get it, right? They got the concept really well, and some students who maybe need a little bit more help. And those children who are getting it can be the kind of more expert helper within that group, and it's providing them with other kinds of skills like leadership skills, confidence, right? And they're learning, and then other kids who maybe are struggling a little bit more, they're really just learning with their peers. And so they see it as like an opportunity to just kind of do something fun in a group with friends, right? And so these ideas, right, we take from this idea of zone approximate development, that with support from these kind of more expert peers, adults or other children, that, you know, can move things well. All right, so the third thing that we need to know. So we need to understand development. We need to be able to apply development to our planning, right? And then we need to understand content and pedagogy, which we talked about on our first week, right? So these are this is the most boring slide I've ever made, probably. But it's these three things, right? The content knowledge, the standards, and teaching strategies. So you'll remember this. We remember this from the first week. So pedagogical content knowledge. So, right, knowing something about math and what math is, how to do addition, right? The content knowledge, knowing how to teach generally, doing small groups, whole groups, mixed level, right? And then putting those things together and understanding how to teach that content. So these things are really important. And then obviously surrounding all of this is the child and our understanding of child development, I think, is kind of the missing circle here. So obviously content knowledge, you will learn that in all of your classes to come. You will talk more about those things. Content knowledge you've also already learned throughout your entire life, but as you take in math classes and science classes and history classes, as you kind of read your own books throughout your life and you continue to learn. And so all of those things will start to apply when you start taking your content classes. So are you taking, I don't even know what's in this block. Are there any like reading or literacy classes in this? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah. So those, right. So those are some content classes on teaching literacy and teaching children how to read, and then you'll take math, science, and social studies with me next semester. One class. But anyways, right. Social emotional learning, phonics, history, social studies, all right. So all of those content knowledge things, you know a lot of. You know how to know about the world, right? You know how to ask questions, you know inquiry, you know basic math, right? Don't forget that stuff. And then, so this is just an article, I think this was actually on the reading for this week, but, right, so just thinking about all of these kind of other teaching strategies, again, the pedagogy side of PCK, like you need to know how to teach and those different strategies. And we'll talk a lot about those different strategies here, and you'll learn different strategies as you take your content classes, because those, there's certain strategies that are better to use when you're teaching math versus teaching phonics. There's lots that will be universal, obviously, in early childhood, but so knowing teaching strategies, the standards. How is everyone feeling about learning standards? Have you seen them? Have you reviewed them? Probably separate date, into it. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. So yeah, so we're not even talking about objectives yet. We're just talking about the standards at which children are measured by the state, right? So these are what you'll use in your classrooms. This is what you will be essentially assessed on, right? Like ensuring that students are meeting these standards. There'll be a mix of ways that will happen depending on where you teach. But yeah, the standard is kind of the thing that we have
We
to.
don't have a class specifically learning those, or no? It's like, I mean, we kind of review it last year, but we didn't like get into.
So you will have to we will get into them a little bit today. Some, I've just chosen some random standards, but so they're linked here. So I would definitely encourage you all to look at them and review them. There's no class here that's going to like teach, that's going to go through everyone. So like when you take the math, science, social studies class with me next semester, like we will talk about math, science, social studies standards specifically. So that would be, you'll be more focused in on just those. So you'll use things like the next generation science standards. Common Core is the kind of the one that we use here in Illinois the most. So, and then if you're using, so if you're teaching preschool or like even like in childcare, you can use the Illinois early learning standards. So those are different because the next generation science standards, Common Core, they don't have preschool standards. So Illinois has their own early learning standards. But this is also, standards are also a good guide for what to teach, right? Because this is what you need, this is what all kindergartners in the state of Illinois need to be doing, right? They need to be learning these things. And yeah, we have an activity where we'll look at some standards today. So we're gonna paste something. And when you get, and I know that sometimes the standards are kind of like, what in the hell am I even like, what does all this stuff mean? Like, what are these words? What is this mean, right? So in my, I mean, I could post them here too, I guess, but I also talk of, I have like these videos that are great. They're just like YouTube, and they're just someone walking you through how to read the next generation.
Sure.
Right?
We're gonna have to get that class.
I don't know if there's like a lot of standard questions, like about standards. They're more like situational questions. But yeah, I don't think you don't have to like memorize this. No, there's so many. There's so many because it's like you have to do all the standards from preschool to second grade. It's 2 minutes. Okay, so we're any other questions, and we'll just jump into our little activity then. Okay, so if you want to just turn, you have your little groups or partners, however you were set up right now, and then I'm going to go around and I'm just going to pass you a little, it's very sophisticated activity. There's just 2 standards stapled together. I think there's like 1 math and then 1 either science or social. And so I want you to just read it. If you want to go look it up online too, you're welcome to do that to see kind of where it falls in the grand scheme of standards. Because, right, like the Common Core standards, there's many standards for kindergarten, right? Which evolve by concept, right? Specific. So you can explore that. So take some time to look through, learn about the standard, and then just kind of think about these questions, right? Like, what is the essence of this standard? What does it say? What is it telling me? Like, what would a student be learning if they were doing, right? And some are going to be super obvious and some might be a little bit. And what might this look like? So think about the content area, think about this teaching strategy, and then think about how children might be assessed. So the demonstration of that knowledge that comes, and think about development. Clearly, if you have first grade or kindergarten, yeah, so are you guys gonna do? All right.
Counseling.
So yeah, if you want to look it up, just
Any
Google
number
that
of
standard if you
funny.
want to like see where it came from.
Right, those are representation, the methods, those are written here. So this is grade one? Yeah, this is one, so this is the first.
Yeah.
grade.
So there's two standards, yeah.
So count.
So think about both of those. I wanted to give you two kind of different ones, just so you could see like some math and something else.
So this one is math for sure. And we keep counting to 120, starting at any number less than 120. In this range, read, write, numeric. Okay, so for sure here, trying to recall these numbers. Letting them start at whatever number less than 120 allows them to kind of differentiate what number they want to start at and remember or recall those up to 120. In this range, read and write. So you gotta read and write. Numerals.
They're going that high. So they're going to
Number of
100 only.
Grade one. They do go up to 100.
And then this one has 20 more. 20 more numbers. Most of the time it's to 100. Only this one there's 20
First
more.
grade, yeah.
This is a very high level. It's a high level, guys. This is the high level.
Yeah, so this is yeah. So this one is understanding that of the amount of time and understand special cases. So
I think the other one you're looking at is the all one.
Yeah, so it's it's the math content.
Is that long?
So you see how right here it says 10 can be taught as a bundle of 10 once,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then it says the numbers from 11 to 19 are composed of the 10 and the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. So they're kind of like how do you say it? Breaking it down. And then the numbers 10, 20, 10, 10 refers to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, 10s, and 0 ones. Compared to two-digit numbers based on meaning of intensity.
The standards have a lot of
Now you see what I'm saying?
too many explanations.
To the face. Yeah, because
This is at all.
we have to
The thing is, there's no standard itself have more standards within it.
right, so it's understanding face value. Use place value, understand the properties of operation. That's a fact.
yeah, it's not if it's stuff here for other classes. Yeah, sure. Yeah, me.
Yeah.
Any other class like
Give a two-digit number.
so we bought all the so that those of you who remember the ECED grant, so we're the scholarship. We had all these funds for supplies, and so we bought They never put our classrooms in here, so then it just.
That's probably-
So I have a bunch of this stuff, like, at this point. Get it there, it's like, here, but now, it's fast. So, but yeah, you can, if you wanna, or just let me, I have. Yeah.
I think for this little standard, some of
Yeah.
the parents might be like, I know you're usually to 100. This one is to 20. They might complain a little bit, seems like.
I think the standard for the routine in the classroom for this would be first like the teacher together.
Mhm.
So she's up there with a
Mhm.
number grid and all together will count. I would say that would be good to do first. And then it'd be good to be like, all right, we got to 100. Now we're getting 20 more, right? So then the teacher can add 20 more. And then after like they all did it together, I feel like she could do like, who wants to come up here and show me where the 120 is? And then they can go up there and put like a sticky or something on the 120. And then from there, okay, who can come and pick another number less than 120? And let's say they pick 100, right? And then they'll put the sticky like on the 100, and then we'll be like, all right, well, let's count from this number to this number. I think that would be like because I think that's the way they will understand the standard. Because like you said, 120 is big. It's a big number. Normally they go to 100.
This is a new idea.
But it's extended the counting sequence. So that's why 20 more. And then I can see how these two tied down with that by counting by 10, by showing them.
Kind of breaking it down.
Yeah, I think it's just about breaking down a lot. How might this be triggering?
Just gonna rinse the rest.
Okay, I feel like this another thing would be like I don't know. What could be an activity that the teacher can do?
The most of the time have that little number chart.
And have them kind of just do them themselves?
I think that's before, like it's a, some would be a blank number chart, or they have like to
Couple numbers written
yeah,
on there.
and then
have them,
they
like,
fill in the
blank.
blank. But I don't think there is really to 120. They
There
would
isn't.
like create an extra one to like 100, and then like
20.
yeah.
But I think you're right.
Usually I see it's only to 100, and then if they were to make another one, it would be another little. They'd make the teachers themselves make their own little chart for the kids.
Yeah, but I like the idea how you said that we can start off by having them kind of fill in, not completely blank grid chart, but just have some numbers in there and then just kind of have them fill in the rest.
Yeah.
And then maybe perhaps once you see that they reach the filling of the grid, maybe you can give them a blank one.
The snacks are there.
So that's how
I'll be back. All right, how we feeling? We need a few more minutes? Everybody ready? Let's take like 2 or 3 more minutes and then come back. Ready? Okay. Right. Wants to start. Okay. Right, tell us your standards. Our first standard. We have this. You said the essence of it is being size of things. Find a worksheet. No worksheet. Just kidding. Okay, let me hear. But it was like, which one is solid? But like 1, 2, or 3. Then we came up like with the ones that objects. So we say like, of like blocks or their own types and shape with them. And then we'll talk about it. Like you said, one for like a whole class. Plus, you can do the heights of the kids. Like, I know it's first grade. Numbers. Does it say read the standard? Order 3 objects finally. Two objects and directly object. So like if you're using the whole class for like comparing 3 or 2 pieces. Right. Yeah. But we said like because it is first grade, you could put a length of the child in inches. So like they're starting at cars, like 48 inches. 36 inches or like whatever, so you can see the visual how far apart they can be. So it's like that and 3, how much shading being able to differentiate like the size, things like different like height difference kids, and then just being able to tell like not by like
it's only a little bit, it's shorter than the other.
Yeah, so they're using, right, so they can use both non-standard and standard forms of measurement, which you'll learn all about this in that class, right? But, yeah, so you might start off using some non-standard forms and using, yeah, markers or blocks, whatever you have in your classroom. Arms, whatever, right? And then move using standard measures like or a yardstick. So yeah, so if you're doing like volumes, so this is acting like this, it says specifically about length, right? Yeah. And so my worksheet, I'll just give everyone my worksheet spiel. Did you guys say this in my bring it again? I just feel like worksheets are not a great way to engage young children in learning. I think that I used to be of the mindset where like just throw all of the worksheets into the dumpster fire because they're kindling for my fire pit in the fall, But there's some value in having a worksheet, maybe as like an assessment tool, right? You might have. But I really encourage everyone to make their own worksheets. And you can find inspiration from the internet, but your children are not going to be the same children that, I don't know, Miss whoever from Teacher Payne's teacher has in her class, right? So, I think just like be thoughtful in your use of worksheets and really think like, is there a better, more hands-on way that I can teach this idea or assess this idea without having to have them do a worksheet? Or use like journals. Like I love the idea, right, of having like a math journal or a science journal or a journal for every class. So then they can document their learning in there in, kind of informal ways where you'll have this whole setup probably in the classroom, right? So you'll have a smart board. You can put stuff on there. They can put things in their notebooks and then they have a space where they keep those in your classroom and then you look at those every day and that's how you're assessing. So yeah, just, think when you see a worksheet that you think is really great, think about what would Dr. Mulder do? And can I teach this in a way that is more hands-on? Can I assess this in another way? How else can students demonstrate their learning in a way that's not just this worksheet? Homework too, I get, right? So some schools are doing away with homework altogether. But homework might be a place where you're using worksheets, right? I think it's both a good tool to engage families and caregivers and parents and whoever's at home with the child, so they know kind of what's happening in the class but not homework as like you're being graded really heavily on homework because every child has a different level of support at home and it's not there's no equity there. It's not fair. Everyone's different, so think about that, right? It's a tool to help reinforce ideas, help families know what's going on in the classroom, but not necessarily like. I think like I remember my son's teacher she did those like homework hero passes like for the kids. So if they did their homework every week, then they got like a free homework pass. They didn't have to do it, right? So it's just like it's not really like it's not giving him a grade or giving those kids like any kind of real special reinforcement. They just don't, because those kids are just doing it. Now they don't get to do it. Some kids aren't doing it, but they're not getting like it's not reflecting negatively on them, right? So like I love that idea. I like that she did that. That was his actually third grade. So outside for you that great. But anyway, sorry, I've gone on here. Here we go. No worksheets, if possible.
The second stage was constructing interpret maps and put graphic representation. Familiar online places.
This is a social science.
Yes. And you can just kind of like being able to communicate That we specifically said states, but it could be like different landmarks.
Yeah.
Or different cities, different, just like on states or. Cities and lands. One, two. It said. I don't know if there's there's a state project, they refer to sort of.
Yeah.
States, right, do the project, where you have to identify certain states that presented it. Because that could be like a good way for kids to visually see it on the map. And then like some activities like learning more about this, really like direction. And just being able to have them. It's another program to draw on that. I think that's really difficult nowadays because everyone opens like for the map and everything. You don't physically use like a map to travel now, so they remember that kind of used to be. So it's kind of trying to look for them like it's something to families. Demonstrate the understanding of it, is being able to read a map, and it's not like a exact map, but like just like a map you have basically they can be able to identify like the east coast, the west coast, the blue, and like tell you which things you want to so.
Right, and so like, so this kind of standard, right, within the run of your life, either standard related to standing meeting, right? So it's a lot of like map making activities. Go on with one, but then it's an app. So it's like for getting like marks, there's things that we have in on a map, directionality, is really important. That's the thing that, we're thinking about like, right? Thinking about the order in which they'll learn things later on. Getting. Yeah. Great. Okay. Explain how for the essence of making them be participate in right always right. So that's a routine that we thought about was full classroom jobs. Yeah. And chart out categories and I leader like it's great. Helping out the documents coming them, but reminding them if they're visual and visual. Yeah. Yeah. What's helping objects, even with learning and standing for it, getting each object. One is one thing. One. So then like this is back to the creature that another activity that basically like two flashcards, and one would have an image of like two cookies, the other one would have the number two on it, and they're like cardboard and match it to show yeah, so that's showing that like moving from pictorial to symbolic, where they're like seeing a picture, you're seeing that means two, that's how many. And I think that standard two is also thinking about like the one correspondence and using that idea of like tagging in it. So when you count, right, like pointing at each thing. So using that as like a technique. We all see. I do. So I'm not ashamed. What are they there? Or what? Anything else? Yeah.
Well, just for the how my children demonstrated is just meeting lessons themselves, right? Or you know, like someone in parent will be like, oh, like when we're on walks, like, how many cars do you see? And they'll like come from out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's like a classic, well, that standard is like one that we, I think, use all the time in just like our daily lives of thinking about just asking children to count things all the time and tell us how many. And that's an important skill. All right, who wants to go next? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, tell and write time in hours and half hours using analog and digital clocks for first grade. So for analog clocks, they're the clocks on the walls.
Yeah.
So
This one.
I guess you can start saying how to tell the short arm and the long arm of the clock, and tell which one's for hours and minutes, and then also like Gladys said mentioned during our discussion, you mentioned that making a circle and out of paper and writing down the hours and then counting by fives. And they know increments of fives. And then like for digital clocks, a little bit tricky. I don't remember. So I guess for me, something that would work probably flashcards of digital clocks. So they know like which side is for minute, which side is for hours, and which side is for minutes and for trades. Like how long is 30 minutes from now?
Yeah, the digital clock thing is interesting because I think young children already kind of know what a digital clock. I mean, they have like a tablet or they've seen a tablet, you know, there's computer, you know, they see the digital format. Yeah, so the analog clock, which is interesting, learning about, but it's just a thing. Oh, that's great. So, but I think the idea of like what you were saying, like learning how to count by fives, right? These are still like a lot of math, you know, you've been think about the clock as it's like, you know, it's 4 quarters and it's a whole, and so those are all like just what we're thinking about. So they are important skills that build. Something that seems like kind of a dead technology, right? That's like not really something that you have an analog clock. Anyway, no. Grandma stuff.
Just here, every second.
Oh, my husband has some analog watches, and I was like, you need to put those away. Or I cannot hear that. Yeah, the ticking is. Yeah. All right, yeah.
Like, you know, you're trying to, doing that, you can go from, you know, from these numbers, like,
Yeah.
orders, so then you go from there.
Right.
You know, like, and if we do kind of like the circle to do us, then like you can get like also when you get a slide,
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So the other stuff that we have was science. It says living things in water, air, and resources in the air, and the living places that cannot the things in the trees, materials, and the birds in the trees. So basically, essence of this will be that how can we teach kids, like, you know, as a human with the plants, and they also require they need to lead. And the activity that we can do, like I told her that in the country we have a flower fair, and we put soil and beans.
Yeah.
And then like when you put it on, you know, under the sun and with water, and you start growing up the plant, and then you know, they will see the evolution. Then, yes. And how children demonstrate and at some place or something, like whatever they have to require. But they tell me, oh, yeah, I see my dog drinking water and he needs food in order to.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I think, 'cause this is another worksheet thing. I see students give me worksheets for these like plant with life cycle. Just give them a bean.
Yeah.
And put it in a plastic bag with some paper towel. Spray it, put it on the ledge, right? And then have them draw it, right? Have them draw this like evolution of this, the growth of this little bean into a sprout and then into a plant, right? It's just like, let's see.
But it's not 41 and I did that back when I was sleeping. I still remember.
Yeah, I remember doing the little, like, we probably all did this, little plastic bags with little bean sprout in there, and then like, yeah.
With the pink
You hang them by the window, cause it needs the sun, right? And you gotta spritz it with the water every day, because it needs water. You need to have a moist, humid environment, right? So yeah, but yeah, thinking about like living things, thinking about ecosystems, how we all reliance on each other, that we all, you know, we need the sun, we need just like animals need that, we need animals, right? All of these like codependent things. So, okay. All right, you guys want to go?
Yeah, I just didn't take a look at the second one.
That's okay.
But we had a math one and it says count to 120, starting at any number less than 120. In this range, read and write numerals and represent a number of objects with a written numeral. So, we were kind of debating because we're like, it's a first grade. And usually first graders only go up to 100. So we're like, wait, why is it up to 120? You know, so we were trying to figure out. So I thought about a strategy because normally when they're in first grade, they don't know like the sequence. So I was telling my partner that an activity that could be done is like the teacher can have for the 100 grid up on the board, and together, well, maybe after they do like a full counting as a group, they can together add those 20, those like one, yeah, the 20 numbers in addition. They could just do it together so they can physically see it, and then have the teacher do the activity with them. So it's like, okay, well, now that we got all the 120, who can come up here and put the sticky in the 120, and then just have them put it on there, and then okay, like is there another person that wants to come up and pick a number that is less than 120? And then we'll have them like put the sticky on there too, and then all together they can count from that first sticky to the 120 sticky, and then they can all do it like together. Because I feel like when it's first grade, like the worksheet would be best if they take it home, so the parents can see like, oh, today we worked on this. But it would be a worksheet that didn't have all the numbers filled in, but some. And this way we can see like, okay, like they got it or they don't got it. And then maybe an assessment could be when they come back, just give them that blank sheet and have them individually. And then that way you can see like.
Right. And thinking about too, like, again, more like, so when you have somebody in a block, right, or you have, it's all going to be like a 10 grade. And so, right, the visualization of number is really important to young children. It helps them see like that this line is all 10, right? It's like a 10, it's like a, like a number like rod, right? They use those manipulatives in right? And so yeah, like getting them used to that too is like why they're counting to such high numbers. Because you want to see the visualization and the patterns, then you start talking about like place value
and that's the second standard.
Yeah,
and then
so this is getting them ready to start thinking about face value and tens and how to represent these numbers. And so like bundles of things, right? So there's like yeah.
I did that, like, we do, one ring, and group, or one ring, so
Mm.
then just like that.
Yeah, and you can see the tens, right? And then when you add two tens together, you get 20, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we came up with. But the second one was it's science, and it says develop a simple sketch, drawing, or physical model to illustrate how the shape of an object helps it function as needed to solve a given problem. The top of my head, I thought about an ice cube. So just kind of showing them, the ice cube, and like, well, what happens if I just leave the ice cube here? Or like kind of show them that solve the problem in the way that they know that, an ice cube stays frozen when it's in the freezer.
Right.
Yeah, but that's kind of all I got right now.
Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, all right. Go to this last group. What do you got? What do you got?
So what I did was that, the center focuses on measuring length by finding for the end on the object. And for an activity, would blocks a strip and have like, measure object, like, for a book, by placing the blocks end to end. And then for the demonstration, understanding, I said that students measure objects, count the number of.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay. Well, hopefully, okay, so thoughts on standards. You read some. What do you think? Okay, great. Doesn't seem so scary. So yeah, I encourage you to look at the standards and just kind of just read through them and look at them. I think once you see them kind of together, but especially for like a grade, right? You can see how they go off each other, how, they're going to support each other. You're probably some standard, somewhat linear way, but there will be ways that you're kind of incorporating them at different times. And right at some point, you think about the content integration, how these standards work together in one lesson. So you'll be thinking about how you'll be teaching math and science together, or how social science can be supported during the science lesson or during the math. So yeah, I mean, your teacher homework, right, is to just like read the standards, just like get familiar with them so that there's a lot. I mean, but there's standards for every content and every grade, right? So, or just social science, some social science, or one each grade has. Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm gonna leave this video here. This is actually from. So if you're not, if you got to be thinking about the content test at some point, right? If you're doing licensure draft. And so this is actually from 240tutoring.com, which is accessible and free to all of NEIT students. You just have to email like the case up and they will get it to you. And I can post it. You also should have access to the like content test planning stuff in your D2L, right? So it's probably in there too, like how to access it. So that. But this is just part of the like study guides that they provide you. This video about integration of technology. But it's like 5 minutes, so that's probably a good stuff. So I'll leave this here, you can watch it, but also a plug for 240 tutoring stuff. It'll be free to you. You know, never too early. I also posted that stuff. Okay, well, let's share out. Who wants to share out their tech tool apps? What did you guys find? Maybe we won't make everyone do it. You all have access to the shared drive, so make sure we have everything. So, yeah. Did you have did everyone have something that in mind already that they're like, I've used this and I think it's awesome, so I'm gonna take that.
I wasn't
Oh.
silently now, like find it. Tool that's like.
Oh, great.
That you like some. Yeah.
Okay.
Never in preschool. No, no. It's a lot of like song, but like that's how they write. Yeah, very production. And then there's also still so like so it's just different, like the uppercase lowercase and then like an animal that starts with that. Those are just one of the examples, but a lot of it is like audio for that hearing. Yeah. Okay.
You know. It's important to teach kids that
The
zero
zero,
is a number.
yeah.
Yeah.
Apple, I gave them all away. I would then zero apple, today.
I don't know if this guy's voice is like my jam.
No, it's very kind of street.
One.
You really need to recap that role. Yeah.
They-
Like if someone like this.
Yeah.
Like, no, but like, he's really good.
The Jack Cartman,
Yeah,
I love Jack Cartman. He's so good with the rhyming and yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny.
Yeah, music, yeah, it's all, those are great, I think, yeah, connecting, right? And again, it's like, when you're thinking about technology, the point is that it's like, you're using it in a really intentional way that's like reinforcing these ideas. It can be both, right, we'll do, we won't talk about station rotations in here, but I teach about station rotation and, right, so center-based kind of like blended learning model where you're using technology as part of a kind of center that is reinforcing some concept that they're learning in these other, right? So like there'll be a teacher-led station where the teacher is doing stuff, and then they'll do something collaboratively as like a small group, and then they'll reinforce those ideas through technology. So again, yeah, so it's just intentionality. And sometimes fun. Sometimes it's just like morning meeting time. Let's get our wiggles out and sing some silly song about zero, right? So that too. All right, who else wants to share? Got something real good.
The one thing is called Seesaw.
Okay.
Yeah, but that one is stuff I really like it because like usually you said sometimes parents are not involved with kids.
Yeah.
But like in order to guide a little child with the knowledge and learning behavior.
Right.
So like for like just to make sure to understand the same with pages and all the information. But like this one they do math, they do song, they do phonics, they have science, and they also have what's that? And they have kind of activities and like you can do with Lego, you can you know, these are really like it because the parents they're supposed to be there.
Yeah.
For them.
So it has like some technology component, and there's some activity that they could do. That's,
Yeah.
that's
And they can do with a pen.
right. That's great. What else? What did other people find?
When it's called Scratch here, it's just like a recap. Oh, cool. That's like from 5 to 7, mostly. And they can create their own stories. So it's like a powerful tool for them to build up problem math and problem solving. And they can build on their stories, share with the class. Fun specific for math.
Yeah, there's so many cool like coding things now, which is great. STEM, the future of careers and jobs. So important skills.
I'll go now.
Yeah.
So not right now, that just said, games, right? So mine is called Freckle. And, this one is more like, so think about like a video game. Think about like, you know, when you're playing a video game, you pass to the next level, or you get coins, or you earn rewards, or so Freckle is like this. It's very personalized instruction, so the kids are able to hear it or read it. So and it also allows the teacher to change the language. So if you know they need Spanish, it could get translated to Spanish. And it offers math, English, language arts, social studies, science, and Freckle makes everything like so engaging. So it's like you'll hear a kid like, "Oh, I passed it," like out of nowhere, you know, or they're so excited to like move on, or they'll come up and be like, "Oh, you know, like I finished this level, like I'm, you know." And I remember when I used to work with the first graders, they used to she used to have a chart like you said, and they used to like move like their stars to every level. So there was this one little kid that was ahead of everyone, and if someone passed them, like he would get so mad, and he'd get on his computer and he'd go get his computer and he'd open it up, and then until he passed that child, he was okay. And I was just like, oh, and like that's what you would see, like so much engaging. Like Freckle is like it accommodates to every because you know we all learn differently. So it accommodates to different different learning styles, and it also allows the teacher to like go in there and kind of see like if the child is struggling with a certain content, and she's allowed to put more work based on that content until the child is like has achieved the content, then they keep going. And I think I like that a lot because normally you can't really like see how far the kids are going like in a tech tool. And with this one you can measure like you know how much they've advanced, or if they need more support.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a really important point in thinking about like the tools that we use and how we're able to kind of assess what it is that the child is doing. So sometimes, and it doesn't need to be all the time. Sometimes it can just be like a fun thing that is reinforcing what they've already learned. You already have an assessment built into that, you know, you're doing these blended learning models, right? There's an assessment already built in. So you don't necessarily need that tool to assess it. It's just a reinforcement for that child. But yeah, it's nice to think about tools like specifically teacher tools for their classes that are going to have those built-in assessments in there. So, yeah,
Because it makes them kind of like, oh, you know, like they don't have anxiety, or they're not scared, like, oh my God, my teacher's giving me a test, you know, so it kind of like blend in.
Yeah, no,
they make it into like a game, like a little game.
yeah,
Makes
I
it
don't
much
have
more
anyone
engaging.
use Prodigy.
Yeah.
It's like
It's linked
like
into
that.
Clever. Have you heard Clever? Yeah, it's linked into
Yeah, yeah.
Clever. Yeah.
So Prodigy is like another game. It's like
reading, right?
It's reading and math, and it's kind of like a role play game, and so like a video game. You answer math problems or reading, you know, tasks to get like magic. So you like then you fight things.
And that one has like that one has like a game board, right? It looks like a game board. Like
yeah,
they have,
it's like
like,
yeah.
yeah.
So you go through different levels. it's really cool. There's free versions of that. There's a paid version as well, but
There's also a free version of Freckle,
free
and
version
it's an
of
app too, so.
When the teachers give like, these apps to the students, like, more than you have to pay, but like, if you don't have to pay and they give you a phone, like, that's.
So a lot of schools, right, will provide, and a lot of schools will have like subscriptions to some of these different programs. And so they will pay for those and the teachers can have access to them. Teachers get some budget, right? So then they can use that budget to subscribe to other things, or, sometimes it just, if you're a teacher, right, you get things at like a discount or it's free. So, yeah. Anybody else want to share? All right, well, you all have access to all of these in the shared drive, which is why I did that. So now you can like copy that if you want and take it with you and, no, just put it in that sheet and then I'm just gonna use that to grade it. So, yeah, is that better? Yeah, yeah, no, you're all good. Okay, so, all right, so thinking about planning, so now we have some foundational understanding of what we need to do to like get started when we're thinking about planning. This is like our intro. We'll do lots more of this throughout the semester, but so backward design is the planning model that I really liked to use. It's thinking about the big picture goals up here, right? So I call them your desired results, your goals, your learning goals. And then from there, really building your standard alignment, right? Objectives, assessments, and then thinking about the actual activities that you're going to plan. And so this is all here. So step one is going to think all those things I just said, right? So big picture, what you want students to do, maybe at the end of like a unit, right? So it's going to be really a bit broad. It's not going to be very specific, like your objective. Then you'll have your learning objectives and the standards, and all that should be aligned. So your standards that you have here, right? You would think about how that aligns with like a specific learning objective that you will create. We'll talk about that more next week. And then you think about step two, which is like, how do I know that they've learned this thing, right? This objective. And so you'll think about your assessments, and there'll be lots of assessments that you'll do, lots of ways that they're going to eventually achieve that desired result. And then you'll think about your instruction and your activities, right? So the kind of fun of the teaching, right? The creative part. And so you will do this in a way that I don't really love. I don't, so this stuff where it's like super great, but what we got, what we're working really. So yeah, you can get in here. So this is the long lesson plan. And it is not necessarily, it's kind of written with backward design in mind, but not really. And so we will practice with this throughout the semester, I kind of deconstruct it. So it's kind of built more in the backward design way. But I just want you to see this, because this is the key assessment for this class. And you have to, create this lesson plan for your final assignment. So I want to just make sure that we're walking through it. So the way it's laid out, we'll just go through that, and then as we play more, break it apart. But so lesson context, right? So what's your class, right? Who are your students? What does that classroom look like? That context is really important, right? How many students do you have in your classroom that might have special needs? How many students, are English language learners, right? So the context of your class is really important to how you obviously then plan what you're going to do. So this is the kind of section that you think about those things. You think about what it is you're teaching. Yeah, so I would definitely, right, I think about everything about your classroom and what's important to know as you're planning, right? So it's important to know if I have students who have just come here from another country and they don't speak English, this is their first time they're here maybe, right? So like these kinds of things are really important because it's going to help me differentiate my instruction when I think about the activity that I'm doing. Or do I have children, you know, that have IEPs in my classroom, right? So an individualized education plan, right? You'll know all this because somebody at your school will tell you these things, right? You'll know if your students have, or a 504 plan, whatever those plans are, you will know. There will be some support for that instruction. And 504, you guys know we'll talk about this. Do you know the difference between IEPs and 504 plans?
I know IEPs, but 504.
So a 504 plan is like if a child has like an allergy.
Oh,
right? So there's something that you need to know that's important to that child being in your class, and it's other things too, right? But an IEP is like an individualized education plan. So a student that maybe has like ADHD or has autism, is on the spectrum in some way, right? So some of these students, right, will have IEPs, and so and those will all come with like individualized things like how, and you'll learn more about this when you take you'll take a SPED class, special ed class. But anyways, so those kinds of things are obviously important to know. You want to know who's in your classroom, right? And so then there's like these two kind of buckets that are like, I don't know, they're here, so we're gonna do them with enthusiasm. All right, so this lesson rationale, which, you know, I suppose could be your desired result, about in that way, right? Thinking about like, how does, like, why am I doing this lesson? How does it relate to the children in my class? Is there maybe some theoretical foundation? You'll talk about this too. How does it kind of build on prior knowledge? And what's kind of, how are you going to help them, right? So why essentially, why do I want to do this? What is the big takeaway? Why do I want to teach this lesson to these children? What are the things I'm considering? The central focus is essentially the concepts that you're going to focus on and the concept learning that's happening. So these are examples. This is just like our general thing. So I didn't have to create. But right, so it's just written as a statement. Many text words. So that's what they're gonna learn. Maybe this is actually more of like the big picture. So the learning objectives, this is like, you know, a big meaty part of this, and we will talk all about how to write learning objectives well. We will assess learning objectives, we will rewrite back learning objectives, we will do all this. We will think about assessments, but you need to know all this now. I want you to see this. Right, so obviously there's like different kinds of objectives into different areas, and so you can talk about that. Here's the standards, so all the things that you were just looking at today, that's right. We will add the standards here. We'll talk more about this later on in the semester, but right, thinking about kind of the language capacities and thinking about how you will be creating a plan to help in all of these areas. Obviously, all the materials and things that you need, right? It's really important that you have a whole list of like what you need to do. The technology, so, you know, maybe there's a website or some app that you're going to use or a video you're going to show, you know, as a whole group to get started. How are you engaging your students, right? What is this kind of approach to think about active hands-on engagement versus individualized time? Thinking about collaborative learning, you know, your students working together. Time management, right? How much time did you plan for this lesson, right? How are you going to split it up? What are you going to do if like it doesn't go as long as you think it's going to go, or it's like too long, right? Or some kids finish early, right? So that gets you kind of thinking, right, about all of those kinds of things. These are your instructional procedures are kind of step by step. Like, what does your lesson actually look like in practice, and what are you going to do? There's all these sections, right, with questions to help guide your thinking. Good luck. Right, and you'll be thinking about these like higher order thinking questions too, right? How do you, we're talking about Vygotsky and language and how important language is to children's learning. And so it's really important that we think about not just in the moment, right, but we prepare for the kinds of questions, the kinds of open-ended questions we can ask our students to really engage their minds, right, to get them thinking. And so you'll have those things in at some point. Again, theory, so we talked about theory, so thinking about your foundations and how that theory applies to, why am I teaching this lesson in this way? There's some kind of theoretical support for why I might do a more kind of discovery-based, inquiry-based lesson versus something that's like more direct instruction, or where I have them paired in groups in certain ways because I want them to support each other's learning. Differentiation, again, right? Thinking about your students with IEPs and 504 plans and, other kinds of special needs or just learning variability, right? Some students are gonna, maybe aren't gonna be as strong of readers as some of your others. So if you have an assignment or you have some activity in class, it's like so much reading, like what are you gonna do? How are you gonna support those? How are we gonna use universal design for learning, which we'll also talk about. To just make all your lessons just universal, that they're flexible and open for all students, regardless of their level, or their needs, or right. So think about that. Assessment, right? So how are we going to get students to demonstrate their learning? What is that assessment that you're going to do? It might be a checklist. I don't know. What does it tell me for child can and can't? Just feel like it doesn't really help, right? So, and then a reflection, which you may or may not teach this lesson, or maybe you taught this lesson, or this is just a reflection of probably your plan at this point, right? Okay, so that is the long lesson plan. We will talk about this throughout the semester. We will, starting next week, I think, start to break it apart and just start planning a lesson for like a preschool classroom, using those components, right? So we'll be thinking about writing objectives, thinking about assessments, and then planning those pieces out for students, so that we can just refine everything, right? We can make sure that everything's looking good. I'll look at them, so I make sure that you all are like on the right track, so that we have, the alignment is what's really important. We'll talk about this again in a week or two. The whole big slide that's like alignment is key, right? Because you really need to be aligning. You need to understand the standards and what you're going to teach. So if I have a kindergarten classroom, like what is it that kindergartners need to learn based on the state standards? And then how do I then build the objectives and assessments around those? And my big idea. And a lot of that stuff will come from your standards or the curriculum. So if you teach in CPS, like Skyline curriculum is got all that stuff. And we'll talk about Skyline more. But so just to get you kind of thinking about what these might look like. So you can okay. So we'll take let's just take like, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes. I know it's like we're getting a little bit late. And if you want to like look in there, just to know what's in there, these cabinets, to see what's there. But look at what's in there and maybe grab a box and think about like, how could I put that box of activities into this template, right? So we're not really using backward design, right? We got the activity in front of us, but I think it's a helpful, right, process to just start with that. Sometimes it's easier to say, I have this box. It's telling me about, I don't know, rocks and soil, and how do I build that up, right? And then we'll start the backwards piece next week. So let's take, just in your small groups, you can, your bigger groups, however you want to do it. Just start looking at that and thinking about, if you want to, you can just make a copy of this template and put it into your drive. And then you can kind of think about you need a break, just go to the bathroom, get some more snacks. My stomach's getting rumbly for your phone.
Sorry, did we start writing in the lesson plan, or we just like think?
You can make a copy of it and put it in your thing if you want to start writing in it. You don't have to. I want you to kind of think about, I want you to think about like what I write. What would that look like? And next week we'll start building lesson. Lots. Classic. Can do lots of that.
I'm sorry.
No, you're. Ooh, you got like the big one. Yep, yeah, that's right. Yeah. You could work for the one you're going to turn into be paid into. The one we're gonna start with is the free. The one that just the left is like a practice. Yeah, and like we have the whole equity set. Which is awesome. I didn't like that. It's on the bottom of there. But that's like a sentence, right?
Yeah.
But it's all the letters, so. Shows you it's like really country. You know, an exploration for you. But don't mix them up. But
Okay, you look more like, one thing, one thing.
Yeah, because you could have, right, like, it could be like blended learning where you have like three stations and then you have more centers, right? So that there's like different stuff at each one.
Right.
You put plus. Huh? Yeah, so this is one here. Oh, so you put this. So first we do that, yeah. Yeah. Like this one?
All this stuff is the learning.
I think what I would do is I would make a copy application on the top of every one card. But then we have letters. For A, for E, for. Have someone read over the spelling, right? Like, great.
But also think about how like you could create some of these activities in your own classroom without buying these like fancy stuff. Right?
So this is. But that's.
Something like one of my organizing there by like subject and it's got quick wild and I put stuff in. Okay. Maybe we could just have a fun to organize the closet day.
But you can also do the, yeah. Here we have the one, two,
Ocean, counting, versus pushing. So how are you seeing these activities like play out in these lesson plans? Stuff?
So it's just yeah,
Open them. We can open. We can open.
Yeah, you can open
We have,
There are, I think there are social emotional learning commands or let me, feel like those are a little bit more,
Would that be something like separate?
so schools now, most schools now have SEL or social emotional learning time. So like, and they have tools that they use. The thing is that it's not necessarily like state specific thing. I think maybe the early learning standards have them. So I figured
Everything on that?
So.
No.
Also, the state does have some, I'll post them. But they're not by like grade, like in the same way, right? So they're like early elementary, middle elementary, late elementary, so they're kind of like bucketed by, yeah, they're just more general.
We could like probably do like lesson plan things like that, right?
So you could, yeah, so you could create like a lesson plan built.
That's the.
And I think like a lot of the social emotional learning stuff would happen like in your morning meeting times, right? Like your circle time in the morning where you're like getting everyone. It's time to how does everyone feel today? Right? Like thinking about those kind of things. I need to find, I think something else has social emotional curriculum.
So then you need to do something.
But we figured out the numbers, right?
Like,
Yeah, these are
find out.
like a little tool.
We need to check, can't be right.
All right, so how's it going?
Like this one is always the one that is big was right.
Yeah.
And if you we can do the season with that. And you can blend the right.
Right, so you think about, right, so like a unit plan, right, is another thing to do. So, right, so some of these are used a collective, right? So a lot of
So yeah.
Right. All right, so take a few more minutes for those who are playing with their toys, their boxes, their activities. And then we'll come back and.
Are we gonna use that? There, no.
Say that again?
Not in this class.
So I guess.
I don't, you didn't need to, but I think that like, I think maybe you all. Because our name growing there like every week. So. All right, so, tell me your thoughts, your thinking, your thought process. You saw the lesson plan, you have these little activities in front of you.
Why we have a big role, have a where we want them to learn. And we think how hard they can work really like finding out the circle time asking what do you guys talk about the activity
Right.
and it's gonna be a be then like rules like or more activities in the day so we have.
Right, so I mean, you would, right, so you would think about the standards. And so if you are wanting to do something about weather, so go back to the standards or whatever grade you did. What is there a standard? Like, because sometimes we want to teach something, it's fun and relevant, but there's actually no standard that is like aligned with that grade. And that's but maybe there's a way you can incorporate weather in other kinds of other curriculum integration points that might be. That's why the standards are so important. What it is that you're teaching, what grade, why we don't plan activities first, right? And I think where I see a lot of students struggling when they make like lesson plans or activities, well, they think they want to do a lesson about weather. And then they think they want to do kindergarten. But then like maybe there's no standards that are aligned with that. So now you created an activity that that you shouldn't even really be teaching in that grade, right? Because there's actually no standard. So maybe you need to get more creative, right? You need to think about there's other things that you might be teaching. I don't know what standards. So yeah, so I think that's why, today I want to caution you to be really thinking about the standards and thinking about your lessons and those activities and starting there. That's your guide for creating your bigger flyer results and those bigger goals that might be a part of a unit. And then obviously like building your objectives and thinking more specifically about what it is you want. So next week, we're going to talk about those things and we're really we'll start to build a lesson for preschoolers. So we'll practice with writing a preschool lesson. And then we'll kind of review that together just to make sure, everyone's comfortable with all of the steps and how things should be written and the kind of formalities of writing a lesson, which there are, I know that you don't know like that, but that's just how it is, right? So, and so we'll start practicing with those things next week, but I want you to really just be really intentional teachers and thinking about all the plans of this. Any other thoughts or are we feeling like we can do this? We can write this lesson plan. We're feeling inspired. So next week, yeah. So next week when we start kind of practicing writing the lesson, we'll do preschool. So we'll only be using the Illinois Early Learning Standard, but I think it's a good entry standards, right? Because those are they're like a little bit easier to just like read. They're pretty clear and user friendly. When you start getting into like next generation science standards, those are probably the most complicated set of standards.
that I've ever read at least. Common Core is pretty user friendly too. They, they have the kind of buckets of, like, kind of content within the grade band for math. So yeah, so we'll,
And Common Core actually gives you like the lesson.
so Common Core will give you lessons. I mean, most of you are going to, I think we talked about this, like, most of you want to teach at CPS, and so, or will teach at CPS. And so you're likely going to be using the Skyline curriculum, which is going to have all this stuff for you. So lesson plan. So and I think next week too, we'll look at some of the Skyline curriculum stuff that is out online, and we'll look at kind of how they break it down for their like big ideas and their objectives and those standards. And we'll actually use some of their objectives we'll assess their objectives because they've written them, and we'll rewrite them because they're not all great. So yeah, so next week we'll dive in and we will start, doing a lot more. Okay, so more to come on all the stuff that we talked about today. We'll continue to reinforce that. What I want to just review is the curriculum models. And so these are just a handful that you will look at for your assignment. Obviously there's like the Skyline curriculum, which is not on here, but we'll talk about that and we'll look at it. And there's probably millions of other curriculums being used at other school districts that I don't even know of. These are some both curriculum models and kind of approaches to teaching and learning. So right there, like we talked about the first, it gets a little messy because they overlap sometimes. But you're going to get 2 of these and you're going to use them in your assignment, which we will. See this? Okay, so you're going to basically create a presentation that's going to compare these 2 curriculum models. This is all on D2L, so you can review this. And so I think it's great. I think it's helpful to understand these different models and kind of their approaches to teaching young children. Even if you're never going to teach at a Montessori school, right? Or a Reggio-inspired school. The things that these approaches have inspired and the ways in which we teach young children and think about how young children learn are really important. And so I think it'll be a nice exercise for you to explore other models. And so you're going to, review and evaluate these models. You're going to have 2, so you'll be able to kind of compare and contrast them. And we're just like random picking. So maybe 2 will be super different, and maybe 2 you'll get 2 that are not super different. So we'll just see what you get. It's a dice throw. And so, you'll conduct your research, and then you will create your presentation. And so your research can include looking stuff up, online. You can go to the library. You can find academic journals that have done research on these models. You can use textbooks. You can find classroom teachers or centers, right, that use these approaches and talk to, teachers if you want to about these models. So, it's really a research project essentially, right? So you can use all of the credible sources that you have access to. And then this is kind of your, layout of your presentation, right? So you'll describe each of your models. So all of these things, kind of overview of the key ideas related to those, what they look like in practice, how they're related to developmentally appropriate practice, some examples, right? The theoretical foundations and philosophies behind them. And then you'll evaluate, right? You'll compare and contrast those ideas, you'll think about how they're similar or different in their approach. for teaching and learning strategies, right? So we might have like direct instruction and Montessori. And these are probably very different, right? So you'll talk about those. And this is like, yeah, this part you'll just kind of do this like compare essentially. And then you'll do a separate, there'll be a separate section where you think about evaluating like which you think are more appropriate for involvement in the appropriate practice. And then you'll reflect it. Conclusion, and then your presentation will include all of these things. So you don't have to like write a separate paper. You can create, you know, like a slide deck to all these things, and then you'll present it in class too. So we all have a chance to hear about all the different goals. So you'll just do like a 10-minute presentation. Easier. You do not have to write a paper. You will just like create your presentation and you'll use that presentation as your like, you'll present in class because everyone we want everyone to be able to share and hear what you know about the other ones. Yeah, well, make sense? Yeah, and so we'll pick some of those now. So yeah, so the curriculum models are all for all of these. So we'll use those. And so if you'd like to work with a partner, you should do that. Pick that person now, and then I will come around and we'll just start selecting. So I mean, I think the partner is just really small. So maybe groups of 3. You want that? No more. So cluster in your groups if you want a group, and then I'm gonna come around and I'm gonna bring the little jar. And then you're gonna just pick it. I'm over here, right? Yeah, okay. We're just gonna pick it. We're gonna random assignment.
Do you want to work in partners or?
Yeah.
So you can do up to 3. That's good. We might not get
Do you have a
all of
partner?
them. Maybe if a group
Do you have
of
a
3 has to do it 3, has to do 3. Has to do 3. Because there's how many? There's like 1 for basically show like the class each of you. So I want to try to get all right, you guys have your group? I'm gonna just come around. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Hold on, one. Just each pick one. Yeah, you can do that one. Okay, what do you have? Project approach and creative curriculum. Okay. All right, please, what's the, you think, okay. Great. All right, what did you do? Reggio? Auntie play? Yeah. Oh, Head Start. Oh, this is interesting. This is gonna be an interesting little presentation. All right. What is this group? It's
No, don't stress them.
Close it down.
Oh.
I always thought that. No. All right, what did you all get? Direct instruction, okay. Bay tree model. Forest. Nice, that's a fun group. Cool. Are you gonna work alone? Are you gonna work with these? What did you get? Anti-bias education. That one's great. That one's great. There's one of us missing today, so by default, she'll get the last one. High scope and Montessori. Okay. So then Waldorf is the one that's missing. So this one will go to Coral. It's not here today. And so maybe you two can partner together if you'd like. So I'll connect you via email. All right, great. That worked out for me. Look at me thinking ahead. Sometimes I think about it and then I don't remember that I thought about it. There.
What are you?
Okay,
High
so
school?
great. So everyone has their models, right? October 14th is when this is due. You, Alondra, for telling us the date. Yep. And so during class time, we will do the presentation. So yeah, just start thinking about it, doing your research, right? Working with your partner, figuring out your game plan. Get those Google shared, share those Google folders and Google Slides and start collaborating. And then if you have questions, obviously, like I'm sure we'll have time in class before then. We can just kind of talk about it. We can review what you have, maybe if that's what you want to do. So.
Can you kind of arrange our class?
Yeah, so I think format wise, it's pretty flexible, right? I mean, I think you just make sure you're covering all the things that are in that assignment guideline. But a good way, yeah, might be to just like talk about one, talk about the other, and then have some maybe like side by side, comparing and contrasting them on all those different things. Their philosophies, right? So maybe you have a slide that's like a little overview of one, a slide that's an overview of another. We can maybe talk through like and work out some templates if you all want to like talk to each other and be like, hey, like what are you doing? How's your performance look? We can create some kind of template together as a class if that's helpful. But yeah, so I don't know. You can use Canva. So the whole so the whole presentation is 10 minutes. So every group. So maybe if you have 3, then you'll get a few more minutes, right? So maybe you'll get like, so yeah, because we'll still have things we have to do that day too. So we can't spend the whole day. Yeah. All right. Cool. Does that all make sense? Great. I love the way they all kind of spell out. I feel like it's super fun. Some are going to be really sick. Okay. So. Next week, we're going to continue talking about planning, thinking about teaching with intentionality. We're going to do the standard alignment, writing objectives, assessing objectives, thinking about assessments. You're teaching the observation report next Wednesday, so that's just like you can watch that video that's posted there and then do a classroom assessment. And start working on it. Do week 8. Look it, I did have it here. But that's October 14th, right? Yeah. So, any questions? All good? Feeling okay? Just like one little. It's just to like see like. The video is posted on the assignment, I think. It's in the syllabus. It's in the syllabus. It's in the syllabus assignment too. It's in the assignments too. Let me know. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions or need help with any of that. You can also observe like if you work in a classroom or you have access to a classroom, you're welcome to just like go to a classroom and observe for yeah. Any grade. I mean, you could do childcare to 2nd grade. So as long as it's in our little early childhood, so that you could like you can switch to your classroom. Yeah. So that's all. All right. Well, let me know if you have questions. I'll see you all next week. Let's just put all your stuff back. You can from the cabinet. Make sure it goes back in there. I'm gonna lock anything up. Oh yeah, sure. I'll take these and you can keep your little. I'll take the standard thing. You can keep your little. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, don't worry. Don't worry. Yeah. All right. So do we put all our stuff away? Okay.
And then I'll share. Yeah. And then we can just kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's like we're difficult, right?
Yeah, you all are good to go, and I will see you next week. Yeah, have a great week. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. But. Good afternoon. Yeah.